felt trapped. As we are in this season of the virus, there are many ways, I think, in which we can feel trapped, and another word I'd use for that is perhaps not in control. You see, so often in life we're in control of so many things, aren't we? We're in control of where we go, we're in control of perhaps our work, we're in control of, at least to a degree, our finance and so on. And a lot of these things have been lost because of the virus and all the restrictions that have had to be placed upon us. And I know that there is concern about our mental health, and all of us have been affected to a degree. Our mental health has been affected because we're not so much in control, because we don't know what's going to happen next. And we're in a period at the moment where things are relaxing, but even so, it's very slow. And after 3 months, and still people dying, still people contracting the virus, it just is a slog and a struggle. And as I said, we can feel trapped with no way out. One of the perhaps major things for many people is the fact that they cannot get close to their loved ones. A lot of people have not experienced a hug for a long time. And loved ones are so often those that would lift us up and strengthen us, encourage us and help us. It is such a tough time. So today's video is all about how can we cope? How can we get through? First of all, what I want to say to you is, look, it's okay to have black days, to have days when you feel depressed, when you feel down. It is actually normal for that to happen. And don't beat yourself up over it. But how do we find a way through? I want us to look very briefly at the story of Daniel in the Bible, in the Old Testament. Most of you are probably familiar with Daniel and the lion's den. And that's basically the story we're going to look at. But a little bit of background, first of all. Daniel is in exile. And although he's high up in the administration of the Medes and the Persian government at this particular time, he was actually high up in the Babylonian government before that. Although he's high up in the administration, he is actually nothing other than a glorified slave. He cannot go where he wants to. He cannot go back to his own land. He has to serve the king. And yes, he might have good food, he may have a nice house, but he is a slave. He's not in control of a lot of what goes on in his life. But one thing he is in control of is worshipping the Lord God. And so Daniel made it a practice right through his life to pray 3 times a day. And when he was given a house, he had one room which looked towards Jerusalem. He would open the windows 3 times a day, and there he would give thanks to God and pray for guidance to God. And the reason that he was so wise and so able to help the many emperors that he worked alongside was because of his relationship with the Lord God. He was probably in his 60s when he was thrown in the lion's den. And if we look at the whole reason for that, Daniel was one of 3 administrators of the Medes and the Persians Empire. And the emperor, Darius, was thinking to make Daniel the chief administrator over the whole empire. So yes, I said he was a slave, but he would have great power as well, even though he didn't have personal freedom. The other administrators and those below them were jealous of Daniel, and so they looked for a way to discredit him. A bit like the media today, always trying to find an angle on everyone, aren't they? And so they were trying to find an angle on Daniel, but they couldn't find anything wrong. He was upright in every way, in all his dealings. So they said, right, the only way we can get him It's through his faith. And they looked at his faith, and they watched him and observed him, and they saw that he prayed 3 times every day at an open window. And the sort of Jewish way of praying wasn't, well, yes, he would have knelt down, as it were. He knelt down, but probably with his hands up, raised towards heaven, as a sign of worship to God, but also as a sign of surrender to God. So they go to the king, and they say, "Oh, king, you're just so marvelous. Why don't we make a rule for 30 days that everyone should pray to you and you alone? If anyone's caught praying to any other god, they should be thrown into the lion's den." And the king, because he listened to his advisors, and they were all there, apart from Daniel, of course, he said, "Yeah, okay, yeah, sounds good. And yeah, you obviously think I'm very special, so let's do it." So he signed, the law was written up, he signed it. On the day it was signed, the other administrators and those below those administrators, they went to Daniel's house. And if they were there today, they'd have took photos. Of course, they couldn't take photos. But, they witnessed that he still, even though he knew the rule was no praying to anyone but the king, he still went home and he still prayed with his open window. And they go to the king and they say, "King, you know the rule you made?" "Yeah." "Daniel's praying to his God." And this is like little children, isn't it, in the playground. "Teacher, Daniel's done something wrong," And of course the king realizes right away, he realizes that he's been caught in a trap. He realizes that these administrators don't like Daniel and want to get rid of him. But the king, even though he's the most powerful man in the whole known world, has no way of rescuing Daniel, because the rule of the Medes and the Persians is that once the king had signed a rule, it stayed. It could not be altered. And he tried everything during the day, but there was no way. He couldn't do anything to save Daniel. And so that evening, the leaders come back to the king and say, "Look, you've got to get rid of Daniel. You've got to put him in the lion's den." And the king feels trapped. Daniel, on the other hand, does he feel trapped? As I said, in a sense, he's trapped because he's a slave. He's not allowed to do what he wants. But yet his freedom, if freedom starts with this, he goes home and he opens the windows. That's a sign of being free. He opens the window. It's just a little thing. He opens the windows towards Jerusalem. And then he kneels and he prays and worships his God. And in prayer and in worship and in surrender to God, it's like he finds a freedom. And now he's thrown into the lion's den. And the king says to him, "I just hope that your God will rescue you." Well, I want you to look at the two situations now. You've got Daniel's in the den of lions. You've got the king in the palace. Right, let's look at the king in the palace. The king in the palace feels trapped. He feels he was unable to rescue Daniel. And all night he doesn't eat anything and he's got the best food. He has no entertainment and he's got the best entertainment. He doesn't sleep and he's got the best bed. This man feels trapped. He feels hopeless. Daniel, on the other hand, in the lion's den, right? Lions are, I tell you, they're hungry. We find that when we look at the end of the story. They're hungry. They're waiting for Daniel to drop down into the den. But when he gets down there, it's like either they can't open their mouths and they can't move their feet, or they become like pussycats and just curl up with him. Because Daniel had a good night's sleep. The lions didn't eat him. I reckon they all lied down, and Daniel was able to lie down on them and keep warm and have a lovely sort of pillow for his head, maybe a lion's mane, whatever. He had a good night's sleep. The king gets up in the morning and has not slept a wink, goes to the lion's den and says, "Daniel, almost in vain he's calling out, has your God been able to save you? And Daniel says, O king, yeah, live forever, O king. My God has been able to save me. Oh, the king's overjoyed, Daniel's pulled up, and right away the king makes real, right, all those that accuse Daniel, they're going to be thrown into the den. And it says before they hit the bottom of the den floor, lions overpowered them. So the lions were hungry. They were definitely hungry. They weren't old and dottery and unable to eat or anything. But I want you to see the purpose in telling you this story. Daniel could have felt trapped. He could have felt life was over. Did he feel depressed? I'm sure he did. I'm sure when he thought of his homeland, when he thought of the people that had been lost, when he thought of his family that he'd never seen, I'm sure he did feel depressed. But he took little steps. And what I would say to you today, and I'm speaking to myself as well, we need to take little steps. Daniel's first steps, open the window. Maybe we need to do that. Maybe we just actually need to open a door, open a window, and just look outside. And then it says he knelt before his God. And I'm not saying you've got to get down on your knees, but what I'm saying is this, is that put God first place in your life. No matter what's been going on, no matter if you've never thought about God before, if you've never put Jesus first place, if Jesus has only been a swear word to you, what I would say to you is ask Jesus to be the center of your life. Even in your depression, ask him to come into the center. And then Daniel, it says he worshipped. Give thanks to this God. Give thanks to Jesus, who actually came into this world to make a difference. And in a sense, Jesus came into our trap. Jesus came from the glories of heaven, wherever heaven is. Heaven's a place of freedom, a place where there's no bad things, where it's just all wonderful all the time. And he came into this trap, into this cocoon where we are, to help us, to make a difference, to set us free. And we can worship him for that, even when all is against us, even when we feel, well, I haven't got any money, even when we feel well, no one cuddles us, even when we feel we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't. But we can worship him, for he cares. Each day, just do take a little step towards him. Give to him your darkness. And he who said, I am the light of the world, will give you his light. May God richly bless you this week. And even in the darkest corners of your life, may his light shine to give you real life, to give you real encouragement in these difficult days.